Why is it that Wall Street doesn't value airlines as much as you think they should?
Our largest investor is Warren Buffett. He said, you guys are the Chicago Cubs of the business world. You not only had a bad decade, you had a bad century.
Initially, you went to Frito-Lay, is that right?
I've always considered to this day my training at PepsiCo, my 7 years spent there, as my postgraduate work.
What percentage of people actually lose their luggage?
We never lose. We call them mishandled.
Mishandled.
Would you fix your tie, please?
Well, people wouldn't recognize me if my tie was fixed, but okay. Just leave it this way. All right. I don't consider myself a journalist, and nobody else would consider myself a journalist. I began to take on the life of being an interviewer, even though I have a day job of running a private equity firm. How do you define leadership? What is it that makes somebody tick?
People say that running an airline is not an easy thing to do. You have weather to deal with, energy prices to deal with, lots of employees and so forth. But you grew up in a family of 9 children. So what is easier, growing up in a family of 9 children or running an airline?
Running an airline, certainly. Our family was great. I'm the oldest of 9. And I was sharing with David earlier that when I was 5 years old, we already had 6 kids in the house. And so 9 kids sharing 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths. My dad was a dentist. He had his practice inside our house. And my mom worked for him. And so it was a...
Wasn't that busy a practice at times, I guess?
He must have had some gaps in his schedule there. Yeah. But the interesting thing about it was that growing up, I didn't travel by... I didn't board an airplane until I was 25 years old.
Really?
We couldn't afford it. You know, too many of us, and it just wasn't who we were. And I always recall one of my most stark visuals of my childhood is we went on one family trip a year. My dad would get us all in the station wagon. And this was apologies to our safety friends and regulators in the audience, but there were no seatbelts, there were no car seats. There were 9 of us, my mom, my dad, my grandmother in a station wagon, all piled in with
Right.
we were allowed to put whatever we could fit in our pillowcase and brought it for 2 weeks. And that was our family trip. So I must have figured somewhere in my unconsciousness there has to be a better way to travel. And so so I'm still on that pursuit and that mission to this day.
Now, your mother must be proud that her son, our first child, oldest child, is the CEO of Delta Air Lines, which is the largest U.S. air carrier.
Largest carrier in the world.
Does she ever call you with ideas or complaints, or not that much?
All the time, all the time. She gives me her ideas. I always ask her, please, when she's traveling, not to tell anybody who she is.
Okay.
And that never lasts. I've caught her, people have told me that she applauds at the end of the little safety announcement that I do on the front end of the plane, so it's kind of cute.
Now, you travel on Delta yourself most of the time?
Most of the time.
So you fly coach, is that right?
I often fly coach, yeah. I find it more interesting back there.
Okay. What about the leg room back there, though?
Well, the leg room is fine. You know, we got what you find when you fly in coach is it's more entertaining, so you don't worry about your leg room. You see what else is going on. That's where the real people are, and that's where that's where the party is.
Okay. So let's talk about running an airline generally. To be honest, there are a lot of people that say if you want to run an airline or run a big business, go to a good business school or work your way up and be a management expert and so forth. But you were trained as an accountant, which is a great profession, but some people would say the best managers in the world are not CPAs, right?
Well, one of the things about accountants that I think they get a bad rap is that they're all about the numbers and very introverted and into their analysis, is that what you learn as an accountant is the numbers are actually the language and the vocabulary of business.
For some reason, Wall Street does not value airline companies as much as you would say they should. Why is it that Wall Street doesn't value airlines as much as you think they should?
Well, we're moving in that direction. We're still not there. Our largest investor is Warren Buffett. He now owns 11% of Delta. And Warren, after years of having sworn off the industry, had a saying which I loved. He said, "You guys are the Chicago Cubs of the business world. You not only had a bad decade, you had a bad century." And so we got our bad century out of the way. And we're now in a place where we've really fixed the business.
He changed his mind because he used to say if a capitalist had been at Kitty Hawk seeing the Wright brothers take off, he would have shot them down because there was no profits made in the airline industry for 100 years when you compare the profits versus the losses. But that's changed a bit now.
It's changed, and he wouldn't say that today, I bet, if you were to ask him. This year will be the 5th year in a row our profits have been in excess of $5 billion.
Okay. And your revenues are what percentage in the United States and what percentage outside?
Our revenue is about 2/3 U.S., 1/3 international.
And international, is that more profitable than U.S. generally because of longer flights?
No, it's actually just the opposite. International is a lot more difficult to get to. It's a lot more, the planes are bigger, the fuel costs more, the service levels obviously are substantially higher. And ticket prices, because there's a lot of competition internationally, are more suppressed. We actually make about 80% of our profits in the U.S., closer to home.
And you make a lot of profits, some people say, by owning your own refinery. Why do you need your own refinery? You don't trust other people to get gasoline to you?
Well, we do, and we certainly use a lot of refineries, but about 6-7 years ago, as refineries up and down the East Coast were being closed, when crude prices were well north of $100, we saw that our cost of jet fuel was escalating at rapidly. We're, in fact, paying another $25 a barrel on top of the crude price just to get jet fuel, because we are the most price insensitive consumers of that product. We don't decide each day whether we fuel our planes up or not. We tell them 6 months out we're coming. So any of the costs that the refineries have were kind of being pushed onto the airlines. And so we needed to break that curve and get more supply into the market. We've got a great refinery, and it's outside of Philadelphia, Trainer, that we acquired. We opened it. It was closed for about a year. We put a whole community back to work, and it was a great story. And to this day, it's been very profitable. We've earned our returns on that manyfold.
Okay. Now, in 1970s, there was a big push for airline deregulation. Prices had been set by the ICC.
That's right.
We then had probably 10 or 12 major domestic airlines. Now we have more or less 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. So has deregulation really worked for the American people, or has it not worked?
Oh, it's absolutely worked. One of the changes, David, that's happened in the industry that caused problems for years was that we were seeing nothing, just a commodity. You know, price was almost the sole determinant of what airline you took. We've changed that paradigm where we're now competing on quality and service and people.
All right, suppose I say I want a cheap price, but I want some good food. Is food a big deal to people that fly these days?
Food is important, and we've brought a lot of food back. The industry 15 years ago wound up getting rid of food, getting rid of basically anything, and wound up charging fees galore. We've come full circle on that. We've reintroduced main cabin food services on a significant number of our aircraft, and international, really improving the overall quality of the experience.
Suppose I say I want a cheap fare, I don't care about food, I'll bring my own food on. Can you bring your own food on?
You can bring your own food on.
Oh, you bring your own food on, but I just want to make sure my luggage isn't lost. So what percentage of people actually lose their luggage? Or
we never lose. We call them mishandled.
Mishandled.
Because
what percentage?
We always know where it is. It just takes us a little longer to get to sometimes. But no, seriously.
Now, when you're an airline executive, you basically have 2 companies you can buy planes from, more or less. Is that right?
2. It's not more or less.
More or less. Well, unless you're, more or less. I was trying to be polite, but more or less. So you have Boeing and you have Airbus. Yeah. Now, you fly a lot of Boeings, and in fact, your longest flight is from Atlanta to Johannesburg, 17 hours.
That's right.
And that's a Boeing 777?
Boeing 777, that's right.
But you chose not to buy the 737 MAX for reasons unrelated to what later became to be a problem. And is that an advantage for you now because you have the Airbus 321 and that's giving you more capacity than some of your competitors? And do you take credit for that decision, or was that luck, or what happened?
I put that solely in the rather be lucky than smart category. No, we're big fans of Boeing, and we're hoping to see the MAX flying quickly into the skies. But safety was never part of the consideration set in making that decision.
While you're in bankruptcy, US Air said, we want to take you over. Was that considered a friendly offer at the time?
Everyone assumed, well, that's going to be a foregone conclusion. And the people of the company stood, and they said, it's not going to happen.
You grew up in Poughkeepsie?
Poughkeepsie, New York.
And you went to college at?
St. Bonaventure University.
Okay, and you got your accounting degree. All right, so you're minding your business. You're an accountant at Price Waterhouse. So what were you doing at Frito-Lay?
I was fortunate at Price Waterhouse. I moved pretty quickly through the ranks there and made partner, and probably made partner at too early an age. I think I was 32 or 33 years old, and at that point in that profession, that was kind of the pinnacle of success. And I said, well, if I'm in a company where my pinnacle of success is 32, I need to go someplace to learn more. I need to continue to develop. I got a call from a friend that said Pepsi was hiring, and introduced me to a person at Frito-Lay down in Texas. I moved down to Dallas and Frito-Lay, and I don't have a graduate degree. I just went to an undergrad at St. Bonaventure. I've always considered to this day my training at PepsiCo, my 7 years spent there, as my postgraduate work, because it's a fascinating company.
So, all right, so you're at Frito-Lay, and then a headhunter or somebody called you and said, how about Delta Airlines?
Yeah. I was an active business traveler. I was traveling probably 80% of my time, a lot internationally. So I already thought I knew how the airlines worked, and I knew all the things that needed to be fixed about the airlines to actually make it better. So, of course, I get there, and you actually take a peek behind the curtain and see how complex it is. You say, well, I never understood what actually went into it. But it was an industry that was fascinating to me because I was a big consumer of it.
So you became the senior vice president for finance eventually, and then you became I guess, Chief Financial Officer.
Yes, Chief Financial Officer.
And then you became the President, and then you became the CEO in May of 2016.
That's great.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, but you had some problems before you became the CEO, and ultimately Delta filed for bankruptcy in 2005.
That's right.
So why did you have to file for bankruptcy?
Well, it was the aftermath, really, of a series of events which 9/11 triggered. We lost our international business almost overnight. The competition in the U.S. was so competitive with so many airlines trying to take each other's share. It just kept pushing prices lower and lower and lower. Almost all the airlines wound up filing.
But while you're in bankruptcy, U.S. Air said, we want to take you over. Was that considered a friendly offer at the time? Or?
Doug Parker will never live that down, no. We had a pretty hostile takeover battle. I've got an interesting story. We were bankrupt. We weren't worth anything at the time. And U.S. Air came in and offered $10 billion to buy Delta for a company that's not worth anything. And so everyone assumed, well, that's going to be a foregone conclusion. And the people of the company stood, and they said, it's not going to happen. We have a better idea. We have a better business plan. We were able to convince the creditors through the restructuring process to stay with Delta. And as a result of that, you see what we've been able to do.
As part of that, what happened is you said to the employees and your colleagues, we'll give you 10% of the profits to the employees. Is that more or less right? Or
well, when we went through the restructuring, our people took a lot of pay cuts.
Right.
Obviously, benefit losses, a lot of change, and we made a commitment to the employees then that at that point, once we became profitable, 15% of the profits would go back to the people, which we honor to this day, and we still.
So how much did that produce, let's say, last year for the employees?
Well, last year we paid $1.3 billion to our people in profit share.
So now, does that mean your stock price would be higher if you didn't pay it to them, or you have happier employees?
I think our stock price would be lower if we didn't pay it.
Okay. Is internet available on all your planes?
It's available on almost all our planes. Our smallest regional jets do not have them, but Wi-Fi is on.
And you charge for it or not?
We do charge for it, not for a good reason. I'm a firm believer we need to make Wi-Fi free across all of our service, and we're working towards that.
Well, you're the CEO, so you presumably have some influence.
Well, I do have influence, and they've heard me 100 times to this, including GoGo, which is our service provider, which I always tease them. I call them No-Go, and they made a lot of progress now with Slow-Go, and they'll eventually get to GoGo. But one of the reasons why I say it's not a good reason why we charge, because you don't pay for internet practically anywhere else, is that the planes do not have the technical capacity and capability yet that if we made it for free, the system would crash. So once it gets above about a 10% take rate on board, performance starts to erode. And if you turned it on for free, which we've tested many times, it's still not at the level that it needs to be. So we're investing heavily in the technical capacity in terms of the satellite
Okay.
spectrum, as well as.
But you mean we can
opportunities to
fly to
improve.
the moon and back, and we can't have everybody using internet on the plane at the same time?
That's exactly. You sound like me, David. You know,
Okay.
one of the things I tell people is that, you know, we're closer to the satellites in the sky. Why shouldn't it move? Be faster. But as they remind me, we're not traveling 500 miles an hour as we're sitting at home with our Wi-Fi broadband access.
Now, there was a proposal a while ago for airlines to let people talk on their cell phones on the airplanes, but that was voted down, I think, by the FCC because a lot of people don't like it.
That was voted down by me. I said
Okay,
I will never allow that in Delta.
Because-
Whether they allow it or not, we're not allowing it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now, we haven't built a new airport in this country of any size since, I think, 22 or 23 years in Denver. Now, LaGuardia is being redone and so forth. But why is the airline industry, you're responsible for helping to build the airports or not?
Well, we are actually building the new
building,
airports
okay.
ourselves. We got tired of waiting for the government partnerships that are out there that are trying to crack that code. So we've massively improved the flight experience, the onboard experience. The next thing is the airports themselves. The airports in our country were built for the 1960s.
But you're building airports where?
We're building airports everywhere. We're building the new LaGuardia Airport, Delta on its own
Okay.
balance sheet, building that. It's going to take a few years. Airport construction is the most difficult construction that's done because you've got to build it and live and operate it all at the same time. Building a new airport in LAX. We're building a new airport in Salt Lake City. We're building a new airport in Seattle, a new international facility. We've modernized Atlanta.
Well, speaking of government support, you've been an advocate for not allowing airlines that have government subsidies to compete against you. And is that a big problem?
It is a big problem, and I have to give the Trump administration great credit for recognizing that and reaching agreements with the UAE and Qatar last year to try to draw attention to it and stop it in terms
So
of
what's happening?
at least freezing where it's at.
So are they doing anything about it, or what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think they absolutely are being responsive to the administration. Today, in the Persian Gulf, there's 30 airplanes a day that fly between the Persian Gulf and the United States. Not one of those by a U.S. airline. They're all by the Middle Eastern airlines. If there was a fair playing field, which is what the open sky agreements require, there's no question that the U.S. airlines would be operating in that mindset. We can't because those fares are subsidized and the costs are
about the
being paid for by the government.
The air traffic control system. Some people would say it was kind of invented in the 1950s or 60s, and we haven't really modernized it that much. Is it really out of date?
That's true. Yeah, absolutely.
So what are you doing about that, or what can you do?
It is absolutely safe, but unfortunately, it's radar-based. Many cars have better GPS in your car than we do in terms of what we're able to access in our planes. And the opportunities to improve the air traffic control system are not only speed for customers, but it's the efficiency, the sustainability of the environment, the opportunities to make a difference. Government dysfunction has been one of the reasons why the air traffic control system is, because we've got the FAA on a 5-year leash. You can't change out the air traffic control systems with our current funding model, and that's why we've been advocating for some different models to actually go after a long-term technology project and do it well. Most countries around the world have better air traffic control systems than the U.S. does.
You have a pattern of meeting with employees fairly regularly. You call it a Velvet program.
So when we went through our hard times, we didn't have a lot of cash. And we decided the only way we were ever going to be successful again, Delta has a proud history, was that we were going to have to reconnect with our people.
So today, what do you do for outside activities? This is a full-time job, obviously, but do you have any time for anything else?
I love to golf. I don't get much time, and I'm not very good at it, but I do enjoy that. What we do is we do serious work. We do hard work, and I think it's important for myself to remind myself, while I might do serious things, not to take myself too seriously. And it's kind of a reminder to stay light on my feet, to remember the importance of human interaction. I did also run the New York Marathon last year, so that actually helped my feet as well.
In 2 hours and...
No, that was the first few miles.
But you finished.
I finished. I'm here to talk
But did it
about
have a Delta thing, Delta CEO logo on you when you're running?
I wore my Delta colors loud and proud, raised $2 million for cancer research for children.
Okay.
And I thank you. I don't think I'm going to be doing another one of those. I'm still feeling the effects.
I haven't done a marathon. I would fly a marathon. I would fly maybe 26 miles. But so you have a pattern of meeting with employees fairly regularly. You call it a Velvet program. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. So when we went through our hard times back in the bankruptcy era, we didn't have a lot of cash. We didn't have anything. People were actually taking pay cuts. And we decided the only way we were ever going to be successful again, Delta has a proud history, was that we were going to have to reconnect with our people and get something to catch their attention. So our people were downtrodden, years of pay cuts and job losses and all the difficult things we remember from almost 20 years ago. And so in downtown Atlanta, there was an abandoned Macy's building in downtown Atlanta. And we decided to take out a couple floors in this abandoned building. I'm not sure we ever even paid for it. I think we just squatted in there. I don't know if they even knew we were in there. Right. And we would bring our employees, and we brought all of our employees, 600, 700 at a time, for a day and a half of opportunity to talk about the airline. We had no PowerPoints, we had no slides, we deliberately kept it from being as uncorporate as possible. We had couches, we had chairs, we had curtains, we had low lights as people were walking in. People would come into the room, they'd see some of our people dancing around and trying to lighten up them. No wonder we were bankrupt, they probably thought. We got a crisis on our hands, these people are dancing in this abandoned Macy's building. But what it did is it got their attention to focus on what was really important. And our people wanted to know it wasn't their fault that we went through the hard times. I think so often when companies go through difficult times, employees are made to feel like they're the reason, that they're too expensive, they're not productive enough, that they're a cost, when they really are the very best asset you have. And we do these meetings to this day. Now we can afford to actually pay for our own space, and we do nice hotel lobbies and other venues, but we have a dozen of them a year all around the U.S. where we bring people from different disciplines together, and we talk about the future. And I still lead every one of those, as I did 15 years ago, because that engagement is so critical in what we do.
So how do you grow the value of your airline? You just make it more profitable by flying more miles, or can you make more acquisitions, or anything left to buy in this business?
The airlines are typically thought to be a mature industry. After all, there's not new places in the U.S. left to fly to. Building bigger airports, bigger airplanes, but not new destinations. So global expansion is certainly something that's very important to us at Delta, and we're doing that through our partnerships in Delta flying, many parts of the world. First of all, I think people are more aware of the world than ever before. People want to travel, they want to experience. And again, interesting, because we are living in probably as divisive a time as we can recall for many years, you would think, which would hurt airline travel. But technology and social media and Instagram and pictures, people want to go and explore and see for themselves something that they may have read about back, and now they feel it's affordable. Opportunities not only for the millennials and the young generation that want to experience, but also baby boomers and all people.
I would focus more on the baby boomers bucket list, because they're going to have to do those sooner than the millennials bucket list, right?
Well, we're investing in both.
Now, suppose the President of the United States said, like, I've watched this interview, and you are an impressive person, you've done a great job. Why don't you come in the government and help us in some way? What would you say?
I would say I'm happy to advise, but I'm not sure. I got my work cut out for me here.
Suppose I'm a college graduate or a young business school graduate. Why should I want to work at an airline or Delta? What's the advantage of it for me?
Free travel. Anybody like free travel? For not only themselves, but their partner, right? If you love people, it's a great business, because you are out in the public eye every single day. We do not have desk jobs. Our desk job is in the sky. And every day your work environment is different, and you've got different people coming through, and you have to adapt to all reasons. You think about why people travel. People travel for all reasons on an airplane, for happy reasons, for sad reasons, for business, for pleasure, to go explore, to go meet their grandchild for the first time. And there's all this emotion that's in this tube of roughly 200 people all sitting within 40 yards of one another that have to, so it's a social experience as well. And people that want to actually make the world better get into travel.